Welcome back, ladies
Thanks.
and gentlemen. It's another great day to discuss other people's excellence. I'm the unforgettable one himself, Mr. Brett Carroll. Charles is always daydreaming, and we're just
Yeah.
got like BSN at work. Okay, this is another prod that Charles does not know what we're about to talk about, so we're about to get his live reaction. This is a pod I'm actually it's a little bittersweet for me to talk about, in a way. I'm actually very surprised we haven't heard official news on this yet. I was trying to get this pod in early in the week because I thought we were going to get, like, honestly, any second now. If we got an alert on our phones, I wouldn't be surprised. But we'll probably get an alert on our phones within the next coming days or weeks. But it is unofficially official. We have 7 votes already. There needs to be an 8th vote, and that 8th vote, maybe if not more, is coming literally any day now. But it's official. It is the end of the ACC.
Oh, come on, you fucking asshole.
So yeah, let's talk about this. Okay, so what is happening here? It's been widely reported that 7 ACC schools are ready to leave the conference and to join other conferences. What they're going to do is break the grant of rights. Again, I don't know what that necessarily means, but basically it's the only way they can leave freely. In order to do that, they need 8 schools to vote. The current deal runs through 2036, so they can't just leave because I think it's like $100 million penalty and then like other things they got to pay. But if they get enough schools to basically be like, no, we're ripping this up, they can leave. So the 7 schools that are already in unison that we know for a fact are ready to leave are Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, North Carolina State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. This started with
Just so
Clemson.
you know, the grant of rights contract states member schools, quote, irrevocably and exclusively grants to the conference during the terms all rights necessary for the conference to perform the contractual obligations of the conference expressly set forth. So pretty much it's a legal acceptance that these organizations are granting governing power and authority to said conference is how I'm reading that. I'm not a lawyer, just based off all the legal stuff I usually will read. And that's how I kind of read that. Irrevocably and exclusively grants to the conference during the term all rights necessary for the conference to perform contractual obligations of the conference. So whatever the conference does for a school, the grant of rights is pretty much the legal document that says this is our conference and we recognize it as our conference and they're acting as our conference. That's what the grant of rights is.
Right. So, yeah. So, in order for the schools to be able to grade it, they would need just one more school to join the fray. This really started with Clemson and Florida State. They've been very vocal about wanting to leave. They've been very vocal about the fact that they're basically going to leave as soon as possible. And so they've gotten other schools to join in the mix, and they just need one more school to make it official. And the reason why we thought it was going to happen this week is because the ACC meetings are this week. So we figured if we heard anything, it would probably be either this week or in the next coming weeks. So why are they?
I think it's interesting just because I'm, as you know, like a couple of these conferences, I'm more upset how the football side is completely deciding these things based off of how this affects the basketball side.
Yep.
But as far as football goes, it makes sense. I think what it's doing is for people like me that think it's just a lot of corruption and people getting paid off these kids instead of the kids getting paid off these kids. But that's a whole nother pod, or it's another pod we're going to do for like the third time. Um, I feel like this is good in the sense that, hey, let the schools have power wherever they want to play. Technically, that's what it's supposed to be anyway. Cool. I think it's interesting that they have deals to the mid to late 2030s, and it's so 13 years from now, which would be a pretty safe contract. I can't imagine you get out of this without spending some money. Or I don't know who you're paying, but I guess whoever works at the ACC as the ACC deserves to have their contracts fulfilled. If they're getting, if they were going to be the president or whatever until 2036, guess what? You got to pay them because that's the give and take here. But for the school side of it, football, as a Rutgers fan, I'm just looking at like, are any of these teams joining the Big Ten or who's going to the Big 12? Because that's the other one, right? USC's going to the Big 12. Is that what it is?
Well, USC is going to the Big Ten. And matter of fact, I'm about to get into that right now.
I hate these names because these names are completely meaningless.
Well, now they are because it's not 12 and 10 anymore. They'll probably rename the conferences. But anyway, so let me get into it. So why are they leaving? It is believed that the current ACC deal is among, if not the worst deals amongst the conferences. It includes an equal revenue sharing, which is why Clemson and FSU is kind of pissed, because it's like, well, we're the ones kind of holding up this conference, and yet we basically get the same amount as a Wake Forest or a Syracuse.
They can suck it, dude. Because again, this is all football. This is all football.
Of course.
But this is exactly why, like, just so all the football primary fans that are listening to us, I'm not saying this as like some type of snotty. I'm just saying this is the outside looking in version. Because world football, this is exactly why they don't want American owners, because of shit like this. Because they're not doing it's a bad bad for who? Y'all motherfuckers made up these rules. Like, who made up the ACC? Like, whose idea was this? Because it has nothing to do with all the other sports. Don't tell me that Wake Forest. Like, I know more dudes that are pro in the NBA from Wake Forest than I would say like Virginia. You know what I mean? I don't even know. I'm just trying to point out this is obviously just football related. Because I don't see Clemson dominating anything else to be just saying, oh, we're bringing in all the money. I know football is king here in the States. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this is the same shit. If you remember from last year or the year before, when all the Euro clubs tried to make that Super League, and pretty much the world, besides those 8 clubs, were like, no. Like, no, you're not. Well, I think it's better because there's been more competition. It has nothing to do with competition. It has jack shit to do with competition. And like, it annoys me because this is politics, but we play a game. We all agree that we're playing a game. And that's it. That's the difference. Because people eat this shit up. Because if you think it's good and beneficial for your team, you're like, yeah, this is a great idea. If you think it's going to hurt your fucking program, it's the worst thing ever. And no one actually gives a shit besides the people that are going to get paid off this shit. And I'm sure you're going to tell us who's going to get paid off this shit. Like, rumors are that a lot of schools hate the privilege and catering North Carolina schools get in the conference. No shit. But how is this going to help? The irony is, I agree, but they're the ones making the money in another sport. But the football teams are like, oh, we don't like how they're catering to Duke. Suck a dick. The ACC is more than just football. Like, it is.
And that's the point. And I was going to get to that later when we talked about it. But yeah, again, it's the same thing with the Big East. The ACC is a basketball conference, and the Carolina schools have been the standard for the ACC for forever. And right now, because football is king, and I say right now because that's an important part of this, football is king for right now.
What are you talking about? We're going to live forever and nothing's ever going to change.
Right. And what we're seeing is the demise of another school. And I said this in the last pod we did about conference realignment. It should have been the ACC. Clemson really did save the ACC from imploding because Clemson was a contender for the last decade, basically.
Yeah, but this is only football because this is a conference. Louisville, even Miami. These teams are like relevant college basketball programs too.
Absolutely. If the ACC is again, the Big East fell because of football. The Big East was the best basketball conference by far in the country, but because they weren't good at football, they got imploded. And guess where most of them went? To the ACC. So I knew when the Big Ten, and that was my point when the Big East fell. It's like, so when does it stop? Because all those quote unquote bad teams from the Big East, they're now in the ACC, which wasn't much better to begin with. Now they're kind of watering down the ACC. So then the ACC became even worse. And so now again, if you're Clemson or Florida State, you're the only 2 good football teams in the conference for the last decade. The rest of the conference has been dog shit. So now, guess what? They're about to implode, and then where are they?
That's even like, and you're not wrong, but it's like it's just weird because it's not like Louisville has been trash in football. They produced Teddy Bridgewater. They produced Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm saying that as somebody who's an admitted casual to the sport. I like Rutgers, I like Bama, and I like LSU. Like some of the major programs, the styles of football they produce that I enjoy. Right? It's been a while since the West Coast, like USC's and stuff, have produced that West Coast offense that have just captivated us. But I'm a casual college fan. I don't get how we're saying, oh, well, you guys have been shitty forever. What's forever, man? Because like, if we're counting FSU as one of these great schools, how long ago was Jameis Winston? Like, what are we talking about?
Well, I mean, realistically, I speak for Clemson. Florida State has can say something because they did win a national championship in the last decade, but at the end of the day, it's been Clemson. Clemson has been holding this thing up for the rest of
because they had a generational quarterback. And he didn't even do as well as you believe he should have done based off the hype. Did I frame that right?
Remember, they won with Deshaun Watson as well.
Yeah, but I feel like Deshaun Watson is the one people are going to actually remember more if you're a college fan, because Trevor Lawrence underperformed expectations based off his freshman year. So if we're looking at it, Deshaun Watson beat the dynasty of Alabama.
No, but at the end of the day, they did go to 4 national championship games, 1, 2, and they were in the college football playoffs, I think, almost every year for the last 8 years.
Yeah, but look at how great the quarterbacks are. I'm just saying, like,
oh, of course, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying Clemson has been holding up the ACC. And the ACC has done little to help them. Matter of fact, a lot of people didn't think Clemson was legit because they're like, well, of course you're making the playoffs every year. There's nobody in your conference that's even remotely as good as you. So it is what it is. But the point is, there's been rumors about the fact that, like, yeah, this is a football conference, or this is supposed to be a football conference, but we're still catering to the basketball schools. I'm like, yeah, but it's a basketball conference. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't understand.
I feel like there's a real animosity between those two types of sports because it has nothing to do with like the actual people, like the coaches and the players. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the suits behind the scenes don't like that. And it's some dick measuring contest between them. And that's what I believe it is. That's just me as a casual fan saying that because it seems like some petty political bullshit that, oh, we're not a basketball conference, we're a football conference. You're a college sports conference. Like, you can't say, oh, we're in the interest, we can't pay these guys, because what about the water polo team? What about the girls soccer team? Are we going to pay them too? Yes. Yeah, like you know what I mean? Like, either stop acting like this is an amateur thing, or
nobody's
own up to it.
And nobody's saying you got to pay them the same as a football player, but like you should pay them.
No, because then we're going to start seeing where this money actually is going and generating.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly,
because not all these are state schools.
That's fair. And matter of fact, to be fair, I think one of the biggest NIL deals is a women's volleyball player. I forgot what school she goes to. Maybe LSU, I think. But like she's one of the biggest NIL stars right now going forward. So I mean it does show if you're good enough, you're gonna get the money. But the point of the matter is it's just stupid. But this is why they're leaving, because the way it is, do I put it in the next one? No. Okay. The way their deal is, they're basically getting paid way less than these other conferences are, especially since the SEC just redid their deal and the Big Ten just redid their TV deal. Because the ACC's deal is not till 2036, their thing is not only are we getting paid tens of millions of dollars less per school than these other conferences are, but by the time we re-up in 2036, it's going to be even worse. And so we can't get rid of the TV conference. We can't restructure the TV deal that they have with ESPN, but we can restructure the way we divvy out the funds as a conference and make it unequal revenue sharing. Now, again, if you are the Wake Forests of the world, or the Syracuses of the world, or the Pittsburgh or the Georgia Techs of the world, you're not going to go for that because you're like, no, screw that. We need that money for us to even have a chance to compete. So now you're saying we're going to get even less. So it's going to be even worse for us in terms of disparity between y'all and us. So that's where the issues really lie, where the top schools are saying, well, we want unequal revenue sharing, and the rest of the conference is saying, yeah, screw that, because we won't even, you think we're bad now, we won't be able to compete if we don't get that. And then, like I said, the pettiness of the whole North Carolina schools getting, preferential treatment and stuff like that. So, like I said, they got 7 schools already. Who can the 8th be? They need the 8th one in order to break the grant of rights without financial penalties. Notre Dame seems to be the biggest contender, even though they are technically an ACC school that have voting rights. If they want to, they can join the fray. And a lot of people, and they know they have a home. They could go to the Big Ten easily. They could go to the SEC if they want. They could stay independent if they want. I think they would go to the Big Ten. That fits their style more. If they were to leave,
I agree, but you don't think Louisville and Pittsburgh would try to get in the Big Ten?
it's not about them trying to get into the Big Ten. It's what the Big Ten want them. And
I feel like those two teams would fit the Big Ten. Just thinking of travel and stuff like that.
well, a lot of people are saying the Big 12, and I think that does make sense for Louisville and Pittsburgh, because the Big Ten. So you got to remember with the Big Ten, there is an academic part to the Big Ten. That's why Rutgers went to the Big Ten and not the ACC. That's why they won in Maryland. Pittsburgh's a pretty good school. I don't know about Louisville, so I don't want to comment on how big Louisville is academically. But with the Big Ten, there is like an academic prestige you have to be part of the Big Ten.
You got to be a real school,
right? So, so I don't know if Louisville or Pittsburgh meets that bar. I don't know. I'm not saying they don't.
I don't think Notre Dame has the juice they used to have to just be like, yeah, we're going to be independent again.
And right. So that's why I think they're going to be Big Ten. Plus, all their main rivals are now in the Big Ten with USC and Ohio State and all this other stuff. So I think they would just join the Big Ten, and I think the Big Ten would love to have them. For Pittsburgh and Louisville, it makes sense because West Virginia is already in the Big 12. So it would kind of make sense for those schools to stay together. Again, all former Big East schools now in the Big 12. So yeah, so those are the three schools that they think they can get easily. Notre Dame is the biggest one, but they're saying Louisville and Pittsburgh have shown interest to try to join the Big 12, and so they might vote to also get it. But the point of the matter, like I said, wouldn't be surprised if as soon as before we even upload this daggone podcast, we get an alert saying that it's official that at least 8 teams have joined in ripping up the grant of rights.
If that doesn't happen soon, it's going to happen eventually because this shit just doesn't get reported, and nothing ever comes of it. Like that's the one thing that was completely different about that Super League in world football I mentioned before, because that shit ain't gonna happen. If it happened, it just kills way more leagues because it's a meritocracy out internationally speaking. I feel like college sports would be better off if they actually did what the Premier League does, where there's a top league. If the bottom teams go down, the top teams in the secondary league go up, and you do that because it would make a lot of schools like our school, Rutgers, like a lot of your school in Ohio. Like if they go on a run and they get promoted to a better league, you're way more hyped up. Even if they start maintaining, there's yo-yo clubs that go in between leagues just their whole existence. But it would mean more money, better TV, all that stuff. I feel like if we were to make college sports now, it would be more like that than all these individual, very random, not geographically inclined governing bodies. They're just random governing bodies. It's not like we're doing a conference thing that makes sense anymore. It's not like, oh yeah, the whole East Coast is a conference, the South is a conference, the Midwest is no. It's just like, we're gonna go play with them now.
I mean, that's kind of where we're going because it's just getting ridiculous. So anyway, where these teams are going to go? Clemson, FSU, and Miami are locks to be in the SEC. North Carolina, NC State probably wants to go to the Big 10. Virginia and Virginia Tech might try for the SEC or the Big 12, but I think they're going to go to the Big 12. I can't see the SEC.
Basketball would be fucking lit if these teams went to the Big 10, though. Like me and you would be like, hey.
I would be with it. Virginia, I see the Virginia Tech being more Big 12 schools than the SEC. I just don't think the SEC would want Virginia Tech. I could be wrong, but those seem like Big 12 fits to me more than anything else. North Carolina could go to the SEC, but again, that is a very, very high academic school. I think the Big 10 fits their vibe more than the SEC does. So I think if they had their choice, I think they would choose the Big 10 over the SEC. But again, it could be wrong. All right, so where does this leave the ACC though? So that means the ACC is most likely done as a conference, at least as a Power Five one. Because again, if like I just named potentially 10 teams leaving, you know what I mean? Like there's only so many teams that would even be left. Um, so they'll be done as a conference, at least a Power Five one. It would only leave 5 schools in the conference. That's Wake Forest, Boston College, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, and Duke. Duke most likely tries to get into the Big Ten along with North Carolina. And I think the Big Ten would accept them because again, high academic school, all that other stuff. Obviously and it would try to maintain a rivalry with North Carolina. Now it could go in the route of the Big 12 and try to absorb a bunch of other schools and try to regain its status like the Big 12 did. The Big 12 basically took a lot of schools from Conference USA and American and Sun Belt and basically re-established themselves as a Power Five school. So the ACC could do that. Take 6 American schools, and I have them here. Let me just move this real quick. The ones I'm thinking of: FAU, South Florida, definitely ECU, Temple, Navy for sure, and SMU. Those are the 6 that I thought would for sure fit the vibe of the ACC if they wanted to contain their conference, as well as some Sunbelt schools like Coastal Carolina. So there's some teams in the Sunbelt that make a lot of sense. There's, again, these American schools that make a lot of sense. So they can try to restructure it that way. Now, I will say this too, though. At some point, I don't know if that's going to work. You know what I mean? You can't keep having these conferences absorb some of these smaller schools and say, oh, look, we're still a Power Five school. Like, how if half of your conference are schools that weren't Power Five schools before? Like, that doesn't make sense. And again, there's only 5 AC. Like, let's say all 10 teams leave, 11 including Duke. That's only 4 schools left. So at that point, you're not even the ACC. At that point, you are the American Conference or the Sun Belt Conference.
No, you're nothing. 4 schools isn't a conference.
Right. And so most likely, I said they will combine with the rest of the American Conference and try to become one entity. Whether that becomes the ACC because that's the bigger brand or not, I don't know. But if it happens, again, basically the point is the ACC will be done as we know it. Whether they disband, I mean, again, like the Big East became the American Conference. The teams that were left in the Big East combined with Conference USA and became the American Conference. And that's probably what might happen with the ACC. They'll either get absorbed by the American Conference or absorbed by the Sun Belt Conference. Or again, if they want to become a power conference, maybe all 3 of them combined. Maybe the Sun Belt. Oh, nice. Maybe the Sun Belt and the American Conference and the ACC all combined to try to become one entity, and maybe they try to pass that off as a Power Five school, a Power Five conference. But I don't know. It's weird. I just think it's silly, and I think at some point it's not going to stop because eventually that means the Big 12 is going to collapse again, or the Pac-12 is going to collapse again. Are we just gonna have 2 conferences at that point? Like, how is that even gonna work?
I'm telling you, bro, we're going in the direction of the conference are 2. There's 2, or it's a Premier League, a secondary league, and a lower minor league with promotion relegation system, or we turn the NCAA into one umbrella league, and we treat these conferences like divisions, like we already do, but it's just more uniform.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Like I don't see how what's the need for these conferences? That the more we enter the age we're in, everything else has adapted, but here we are using a very outdated. We're pretty much using what Pee Wee football uses because the college sports were able to make money for so long by lying to everybody, saying these are student athletes and this is amateur. So they've orchestrated their money like an amateur league. But instead of like how it happens on a local level where you go to fucking jail for embezzlement and using those funds for yourself, schools got bigger. They got better. A lot of schools did get better. There's better facilities than they were 50 years ago. So
10 years ago.
yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to discount it because it's not just the quality of the professors and all that stuff. The money, like we see it in our state with Rutgers.
Yeah.
Like it's just different since they've drawn the Big Ten. They've always had good facilities, but there's a different level to it with the influx of the little bit of money that Rutgers has got since 2015.
Honestly, even Ohio, it's insane how much better the facilities are at Ohio. And they haven't joined a big conference or anything like that, just from the strength of them being a perennial contender in the conference. Mind you, they've never won the conference. They haven't even been to a conference title game since 2012, I believe. So it's not like they've even won the conference, but just them being a perennial contender has brought them so much money where the dorm rooms are better and the facilities are better and everything's better. I can't imagine if they joined a bigger conference. I wrote an article back in like 2015 that I thought when the Big 12 was when the Big 12 lost Texas A&M and Missouri and they were trying to figure out what was going on. I said then Ohio and Marshall should team up and go to the Big 12 because that would have greatly improved the schools. And to me, it made a lot of sense. And they haven't even done that, and they've gotten so much better as a school in terms of the facilities and stuff like that. And just in terms of attendance is going up, like more and more people are going there. Their name has become more synonymous. Like people know who they are now. Again, outside of Ohio, people did not know who Ohio University was. They've been in it, and honestly, I'll give more credit to the basketball team than the football team because they've been in the NCAA tournament a lot over the last decade plus. So I think more people just know them off of that, off of the strength of that. So, it's crazy how sports really does help these schools. So we get it. But to me, you can't put all your eggs in one sport basket, even if it is king right now, because again, the point is right now. What happens if 10, 15 years from now, basketball becomes the number one sport again? Then what? Are you going to realign the conferences all over again? Because
Yeah,
like that's just stupid.
you're really underestimating how shameless people are for money.
No. I know that's what's gonna happen, but I'm gonna say that's so dumb. Like that's so because at some point football is gonna hit a fever pitch. We're seeing this with the NFL, where it's like, yo, I think they're doing a little bit too much. They're you know what I mean? Like right now they're king, and instead of just understanding that
Yeah, they just made it so you could flex Thursday night games, which you could tell that was made by a bunch of billionaires that actually don't understand what it takes to go to a game.
right.
And the fucked up part is, just as a side note, because I don't think that me and you would do a whole pot on this anyway. It was the Giants, the Jets, the Steelers, the Cowboys, and there was another team. It was another. The Raiders. It was the Raiders. And I think there was one more team, but the teams with obviously older and more bigger fan bases, that will travel, right? They were the ones that voted against it. There was a part of the league that voted against it. Everybody else voted for it, and I don't think people understand how much bullshit that puts on the people that are buying tickets. Because if you get flexed from a 1 o'clock Sunday game to a Thursday night game, you just fucked up people's whole weeks.
Dude, the only Pittsburgh game I've ever been to was a Thursday night game. It was Steelers versus Panthers. Me and my cousin went. We planned it, months in advance. Can you imagine a week before the game they flexed it to something else? It's like, well, that just screwed up our whole plans. You know what I mean?
That's exactly what people are talking about. It's like, yeah, and mind you, it was the New York team. So way more local than a lot of other teams like what you would do for traveling, right?
Right.
Because that's what it is. Like people travel for Green Bay. I think Green Bay might have been the other team. People travel for this shit. And those teams, that people are like, hey, people travel for games. You know that, right? Besides that, the teams, so you're telling me training wise, you could get flexed to the Thursday night game. So you're instead of playing at Sunday at 4 o'clock or 1 o'clock, you're playing at Thursday at 8 o'clock.
Right. And that alone is bad because again, if I'm thinking it's a Sunday night game and I'm planning again, Vegas makes so much sense because Vegas already knows we're already a travel city. We're already a transport city, right? If somebody was planning a weekend in Vegas and they were going to get off,
not tribal transient.
I didn't say tribal.
You said a tribal city. My brain went, I just saw the Dothraki.
No, I said a transplant city.
Yeah, no, you said tribal. That's what I thought was funny, bro. When you run it back, check it out. That might be the cold open. Just cut in a picture of Khal Drogo. Just look at you like tribal city.
Okay, I might have said travel, and I can't talk. Anyway, the point of the matter is, if I'm going somewhere for the weekend and I gotta work, right? So I was planning on flying in Friday night, and now you're telling me the thing is on Thursday. That changes everything. And so it's just ridiculous.
But they don't give a shit about the fans because they're like, oh, the player, they fly private anyway. I don't care about the 80,000 people that are going to be filling up a stadium because there'll be other people to think they're players anyway.
And it's like, well, it's because we want better Thursday night games. Well, y'all make the schedule, make better Thursday night games. Like, what do you mean?
And they think that's the argument. Oh, well, they're never going to flex. Or if you see, I get you want to do rivalry games because usually rivalry games are better.
Yeah,
but Jacksonville, Indianapolis has been kind of trash forever. So
no. I was about to say Titans Jaguars have been a Thursday night game since Thursday night games have started. That has been like the quintessential Thursday night game. Maybe just maybe stop doing that.
And I get the argument. Oh, well, everybody deserves. No, every team does not deserve.
They got rid of that. They got rid of that this year. They finally said, you know what, you're not entitled to a primetime game.
Well, because before 30 years ago, sure, there was still it wasn't the king it is now. So everybody wasn't checking for the shit. With gambling being legal and all this other shit, we have to stop pretending it's not the way it is. Baseball is with this too, right? People watch, if you're a hardcore fan, you usually watch more than just your team. Tons of people just watch their team. Mm-hmm. And mind you, it's like when I was single and I watched everything. When I got a girlfriend, I started watching less. Now that I have a kid, I'm only watching mine. And then the bigger shit, obviously. You know what I mean? Like if it's the playoffs or something.
But that's true. Some people don't have all Sunday to watch all these.
Exactly, dude. I joked with you. I was like, bro, where the Giants sucked, I was like, I don't have the fucking time to spend 3 hours of my Sunday, a coveted 3 hours, mind you, watching garbage. Because with commercials, when your team is bad, more power to you. Shout out to all the Jets fans that have been Jets fans their whole lives that I watch every week is shit football. And I'm not being condescending. I'm being sincere about that. They care. They're looking at positions. They get into college sports. It's an ecosystem of a sports fan, and it keeps the whole thing going. Because when the Nets are trash, I know all about the prospects. You know what I mean? That's how sports operates. But the idea that the NFL, poor Jacksonville, they're never going to make any money. What the fuck are you talking about? The worst NFL team is $1 billion business.
Right.
That's the annoying part about all this shit. Looking at SMU, and you were talking down about Navy. Dudes literally selling their bodies to put their life on the line. And hopefully, if they don't get thrown into a war zone, they might get drafted or be a prospect and have something to come home to that would change their lives, right? But for the most part, that's a team full of people that just want to play football, and they are literally just serving their country. For how evil our military industrial complex is, it's ironic that we obviously don't cheat for the military schools. You know what I mean? There's no special treatment because when it's free market capitalism, we don't care. How much money are you making? And that's not where the military defense spending is going to. It's not going to a pass rush. Right. But I just don't. I feel bad, man. I don't want to shit on Tulsa. I don't want to shit on SMU, who would ironically, if they didn't get the death penalty all those decades ago, would be a much larger school right now than they are.
Yeah.
So at least you got the reactions you wanted from the surprise pod, but it's just because I don't. It's not that I don't like doing this because I'm a casual college fan. That's not what I meant at the beginning. I don't like this type of shit because this is more closer to what my job is. This is just human greed. These are billionaires moving millionaires around, moving kids around, and acting like it's all in the interest of the children.
Oh yeah, not only that, the conferences made sense geographically. Now it's like again,
they have not made sense geographically for most of our lives.
right. So that's what I'm saying. Again, if you're in Durham, North Carolina, you're about to drive. You're going to fly to Wisconsin for a game now. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Wait. Even better. USC is about to be there. So now you're about to go all the way to Southern Cal for a game.
Bro, you talk about, again, just use Rutgers. Like me and you, like, we'll go to a Rutgers game. We will make the trip from our respective spots in the state, drive the 45 minutes to an hour to get to Piscataway, bing, bang, boom, enjoy ourselves. One thing we're not doing is flying to Ohio. We're not going to Michigan. And I'm saying that as those are the two teams. Me and Brett would be like, yo, if we had money, those are the two teams we want to see. Now, where we want to go to USC because,
right,
better weather. But like, what's the, like, I don't, this is so pro sports at the end of the day. I just feel exhausted being in my 30s. Out of all the arguments I've heard my whole life.
I mean, honestly, it's to a point where if they're going to do this, I do think we should be like European things where it's like, you know what? Let's not even drop the student athlete thing. You guys are pro amateurs. These schools are represented. These teams are represented by these schools, right? Like these are basically just minor league schools, minor league teams at this point. And you can play when you're 15 or whatever. Obviously more like basketball, but like it makes our players will be better. You know what I mean? Because we talk about that in basketball, like how international players are taking over because a lot of these guys have been pros since they were 14 years old, and they're just better than the American kids now. So
yeah, because the modern American kids go to the AAU shit. They get
at this point, let's not even do that. Let's just put them in these programs now.
Bro, and as somebody, I'm the soccer fan of the two of us. Like, I watch more soccer than you do. I'm a proponent of eventually I want to see promotion relegation in the States just because it breeds competition and it's better for the life of the sport. I'm not bringing it up because I necessarily want to see it, but at this point in college sports, there's more teams than there are premier teams, right? So if we have 20 teams, I'm doing what England does for soccer, guys. That's all I'm doing. The top 20 teams, that's the college football Premier League. That's our college Premier League. The second league, name it whatever you want. Name it the Big 30, and then have 25 teams in that league. The top 5 go up, and the bottom 5 from the Premier League go down every year. So you're never fighting to suck. You definitely wouldn't want to suck. And do it for both sports or all sports. So the football team could be in the Premier League and the basketball team could be in the 3rd division and vice versa. Your basketball team could be in the college basketball Premier League, but your football team could be all the way down the 4th division. Like, it doesn't have to be all equal across the board. That way, the money is divided by what you're actually bringing in, but you're also feeding into other teams. Because imagine, a school like Rutgers, we probably wouldn't be in the Premier League. But if we ever made it to the Premier League, that one year
would be. Well, for basketball, we probably would be though.
Yeah, we might contend. We might be in the 2nd division on the cusp of greatness, mind you. That is a whole thing in itself in world football. They have songs, they have chants, all about getting promoted. It is a great feeling. I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna be just moving shit around anyway because we're it's top heavy or whatever bullshit. It's all money. So the top 20 money schools, throw them in the Premier League. Everybody else will rank it accordingly. People will get pissed off. It will sort itself out. Because could you imagine if Navy, like, was in the 3rd division, went undefeated or something, got to the 2nd division, and then the government actually was like, oh yeah, we're taking the quarterback away from you. Like, there might be changes in our system. You know what I mean? Little things like that. You never know. Well, that's what this makes me think about. Like, yo, just redo the whole system, because it's like,
because the whole point, and we went on a whole diatribe about this, but the whole point is it's just stupid because it's all about football, when right now football is king for right now. Who knows what will be king 10, 20 years from now? We're going to reshuffle the deck again. It's stupid. So that's how this whole thing started. But yeah,
yeah, and if St. John, St. John's gets good again in college basketball, so if they become like a juggernaut again, right?
right.
Do they want to join the Big Ten now? And does that mean the football team joins? Does St. John's even have a football team? Because I don't think St. John's is a bad school, right? Like, I didn't go there because I'm not from the city, so it's not like this is one of those schools. You're in Jersey. There's other schools here in Jersey to go to over that city school. So I'm assuming they have a good like educational program. They've existed just fine while sucking in sports. You know what I mean? Like that's usually the tell that you're a decent school, that people still are constantly going to you, and there's not like terrible scandals about embezzlement. I'm just showing that we live in the tri-state. Like, so like
All we know of, anyway.
I said, relatively terrible scandals of embezzlement. This shit, man, this shit is just depressing. Like, because it's nothing to do with anything.
Stupid. It's really stupid. It's just what it is stupid. But anyway, how soon could this happen? Expect major news soon. Again, I made this last week, so I'm surprised we haven't heard anything yet. The ACC meetings are coming up, and Florida State and Clemson are going to be very aggressive. A lot of people are saying before the 2023 season, we will hear about them leaving the ACC. So, like, this is happening. But before, people were saying that it won't last another 3 years. That number appears to have shrunk significantly. So not only are they looking to leave, but they're looking to leave immediately, as in we will hear about them leaving the ACC by the 2023 season, and they probably will be gone by the 2024-2025 season at the latest. So that's the I was gonna talk about this here, but we kind of already discussed all this. But yeah,
everybody appreciate the fact that Brett had this whole thing planned out, and he expected me to somehow flow accordingly with this planned outcomes.
I did not, especially on the surprise pod. I did not.
I know you're happy I went along with it. I can tell at the beginning you're like, oh fuck.
I thought Charles was like, fuck this.
Oh my god. I was
dealt with my computer problems for this.
Usually the surprise ones are fun. Like, I'm just being serious. Like, obviously, overall, I'm having fun because it's my blog and da-da-da-da. But I mean, in the context of topics me and Brett cover, like, the greed is usually we have time to think about it. I would have came correct immediately and not looked it up on camera about the grant of right things, little things like that. So that's why usually the surprise pods are so expletive-ridden, nerd rant, like you guys are surprised somebody wanted to marry me level podcast. Like, and I'm all for it. I can't afford therapy. So I sit in a room, I talk into a mic, and I curse about things I can't control. That's what this podcast essentially is. My version of therapy and a way to build up my resume. And my version of therapy.
And we did that. We went on a whole rant about, football and scheduling and all that other stuff.
Well, because I at least appreciate that Brett, because Brett, if he doesn't like one of my ideas, he'll be nice sometimes on the pod and then just let me know he thinks it's stupid like a week later. But I can tell when I made the promotion relegation comparison, Brett was like, I could do a whole pod on that.
Yeah, shit, that's more content but it makes more sense because, again, what are we doing? It's gonna come down to two conferences at this point, and it's like, okay, so like, it's like the whole season the playoffs then? Like what are we doing? You can't have 50 teams in a conference like this.
No, I told you what it was gonna be when they told us it was going to a playoffs. Eventually it's gonna be an eight, a 16-team bracket, eight on each side. That's what it's gonna be.
Mm-hmm. It's just dumb. But anyway, my final thoughts is, again, I just think it's silly. The reason why I put the Duke North Carolina thing on here is because, again, I'm assuming North Carolina going to go to the Big Ten, and I'm assuming if the ACC dissolves, that Duke will follow them. But again, what if North Carolina says, you know what? If we're looking at the landscape of these conferences, we trust the SEC more than we trust the Big Ten. Because eventually, when does it stop? If the decay keeps coming, eventually one of the two big conferences will be in trouble, right? Because again, if all these bad schools are just getting absorbed into another conference, it's going to eventually water down the conferences. So I can see North Carolina saying, you know what? We're going to take our bet with the SEC and not the Big Ten. It makes more sense travel wise and logistic wise. And the SEC might want them because they might say, hey, look, we got Vanderbilt. It's not like all of our schools are just pure sports schools. We have some schools that are high academic schools. So I can see the SEC accepting North Carolina. I can't see them accepting Duke, or nor can I see Duke wanting to go to the SEC. I can't see that. So if North Carolina decides to go to the SEC, where does that do we just lose one of the greatest rivalries in college in American sports history? We did a whole pod on that a couple of years ago. Duke North Carolina is one of the greatest rivalries that we have in our sport. Are we about to lose that? Because that's what's happening now, where with all these different realignments, not everybody can be paired together. Again, Duke is for people that don't know, Duke is a very small private school. A very small private school. It does not fit the mold of a lot of conferences. It fit the ACC. Like I said, I would be shocked if the Big Ten wouldn't take them, because again, Duke is a really good academic school. But for it to go to the Big 12 or the SEC, I don't see that for them, which means they would need the cooperation of UNC. And if you're UNC, you can't focus on what's best for Duke. You got to focus what's best for you. And if you think the SEC or the Big 12 is best for you, that's what you do. Now, again, I truly believe if the ACC were to dissolve, I think both schools would be in the Big 10, and I think both schools would like doing that. But again, I can't guarantee that. And not just that school, other schools. There's other schools that might not be Duke, North Carolina, but we're losing the foundation of like some of the beautiful things about what makes college great. And yes, I understand rivalries can be reshaped and everything else, but still, like, that's ridiculous. Again, Pittsburgh and West Virginia, they had the backyard brawl for the first time in like forever last year. Why? Because what used to be a really Big East rivalry, even in football, one school's in the ACC, one school's in the Big 12. So scheduling-wise, it was harder to make that work. And they finally had it for the first time in a long time last year. Like, you lose some of that stuff. And that's what makes college sports great. And if you lose some of that stuff, you're going to diminish college sports in general. There are schools that know, we're not going to win a championship, but beating Alabama, that's our Super Bowl. That is our championship, right? The Auburns of the world, and even LSU, when they're down, they get up for that Alabama game. What if you lose that? Again, Duke and North Carolina, they're not going to win the ACC, but that's a big game. Like, you're losing what makes college sports great. You're losing that. You're losing some of those natural rivalries. That's like, who's UNC going to rival with in the Big Ten? Nobody. That's not even a good rivalry. Again, they might be the only North Carolina school in the conference. So it doesn't even make sense, the rivalry they're going to have. Michigan, Ohio State makes sense because those are two states that are right next to each other that don't like each other. Rutgers, Penn State makes sense because those are two states that are right next to each other that don't like each other. Who's UNC going to beef with? Maryland? Like, I
hate you, Maryland.
It's like, come on, bro. It just doesn't, like that. Though that's the only thing that we haven't already discussed, because obviously we kind of discussed all the other stuff of why it's stupid and stuff like that. But I put the rivalry on here because to me, that's what makes college sports special. Again, Ohio used to be in the same conference as Marshall. They still battle every year, even though they're in two different conferences. The Battle of the Bricks between us and Miami of Ohio. We got up for that. Miami, Ohio is usually not that good. We usually beat them, but still, that's our rival. We talk trash. It's ironic because the only Ben Roethlisberger jersey I have is a Miami of Ohio jersey. Obviously, I got that when I was a kid, way before I even thought about where I was going to go to school. And if I did, it was probably going to be Rutgers. So the fact that I have a Miami of Ohio jersey in my closet in my parents' house is like just amazing to me because there's no way I would have that now. I would burn that. You know what I mean? Like if somebody tried to give me that to me now, I would punch them in the face. Like, how dare you disrespect me by giving me a Miami of Ohio? But that's what makes college beautiful. And yes, I get it. Over time, new rivalries can form and stuff like that. Dude, really, the Tobacco Road rivalries, you can't replace that. I don't care. I don't care what you do. You're not replacing that. And so to me, that's the one thing that I think we're just losing here. And I said this the last time we talked about it. That's the one thing we're just losing here in terms of some of the now where they have been smart they've been trying to keep them intact, like UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten, Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. So they've been trying to keep them intact. Like I said, I think Duke and North Carolina would go to the Big Ten. But again, I could see a situation where that's not the case. So I don't know. I just think we're losing it, man. And I think we're being very short-sighted. And like you said, it's just greed. You're chasing the quick buck now, but you're losing sight of what you can be losing out on in the future. Because I do think a lot of fans will get turned off by that. I really do. I really do. I think
I think most fans that aren't hardcore fans don't care enough. And all they're seeing is the possible viewers of the top heavy teams to make more fans. They're not realizing the majority of people that are like the hardcore fans go to the school most likely, or they're alumni of said school, or it's like they're Bama fans because their whole family are Bama fans. They're Auburn fans because their whole family is Auburn fans. Like me and you, like I have like my aunt went to Rutgers, my cousin went to Rutgers, I went to Rutgers. We're all Rutgers grads. Like that's our school. So
my parents went to Rutgers. My dad's best friends all went to Rutgers. My cousin was just here yesterday. He's not really my cousin, but he's my cousin because his dad and my dad are best friends. They met at Rutgers, so I was always a Rutgers fan. That's where it comes from, and so it's just weird that you're messing with the integrity of that. Because again, that's another thing too. That I don't think we understand. It is just money. It's not going to help the school. Is UNC going to be a powerhouse in football if they go to the Big Ten? No. Will they make more money? Yeah. Will a lot of it go to the football program? Yeah. But does that mean that all of a sudden they're going to be a top contender over Ohio State and Michigan? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Matter of fact, they had a better chance of competing in the ACC than they do the Big Ten. Because again, especially once you keep adding more and more schools, it's going to make it even harder. It's going to make it even harder to compete. Yeah, you're making more money, but so yes, and that's how the schools get the fans. Oh, well, we're going to have more money, so therefore our facilities are going to be better. Yeah, but your facilities are never going to be better than Ohio State's.
And most of your students are never going to go to said facilities anyway.
Right. So it's only for the players. So if I'm an alumni, if I'm a student, what does that even mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, who cares if we have a luxury spa in the locker room? I don't get to use that. You know what I mean? Like, and you're gonna hike up my tuition anyway to pay for that shit. Like, so I'm paying more so that our center can get a deep tissue massage after every game, and he still sucks. So who cares? Like who cares? It doesn't make any sense.
Thank God this engineering major is getting a deep tissue massage on our 6-6 team. This is great.
Like Rutgers has been in the Big Ten for a while now. Our football team is still garbage. Again, now basketball, yeah, we've been better, but I would argue the basketball team would have been good no matter what. Once we got a good coach and who can recruit and has shown that he knows what he's doing. I think if we were still in the Big East, we would have been just as good. If we were in the ACC, we would have been just as good. So I don't think the conference mattered. And again, our football team's been horrible since we're literally a worse football team since we've joined the Big Ten. We were at least competing in the Big East. We never won it, but we were on the doorstep a couple of times before it collapsed.
Our basketball team's been better though.
Yeah, our basketball team has been better, but I don't think that's because of the Big Ten. I think it's because we just have a good coach who knows how to recruit. You know what I mean? Like, I highly doubt it's because of the conference that we're in or the facilities that we have now. Like, I don't think that's helping. Again, we know most of that money is going to the football team anyway. So if anybody's getting the better facilities, it's the football team. And where are we? We're still not good as a football team. Matter of fact, we're worse. We are one of, if not the worst team in the Big Ten. In the Big East, we were one of the better teams. Again, we never won it, but we were knocking on the doorstep multiple times when Greg Schiano was there the first time. Greg Schiano's been here for a couple of years. We suck. like, so it doesn't matter. You can go to a better conference. That doesn't make you the better team. In theory, oh yeah, now that we're in this conference and we're getting all this money and our facilities are so much better, we're gonna get better recruits. Maybe, but like again, if I'm a top recruit and I wanted to go to Alabama, I'm still gonna go to Alabama. I'm not gonna sit there and say, "Oh my God, North Carolina's in the SEC now. I'm gonna go to North Carolina," unless I'm a diehard Tar Heels fan, in which I would have probably went to North Carolina anyway. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't compute. It really doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I think it would help a school like Ohio more than Rutgers, right? Going from a non-Power 5 school to a Power 5 school. I think it would help them more than a bad team in a bad Power 5 conference being a bad team in a better Power 5 conference. Like that would make more sense than just switching sides and thinking you're going to compete now, because you're not. You're not. You're only doing this because you're going to make more money just off the TV deals. So great.
I don't know. I'm this is pretty much done anyway. But like, I really don't know what else to say, because we're going to do this again. Like, this, you kept saying it before, but this isn't the last time it's going to happen, and then it's not the last time it's going to happen to just the teams we're talking about now, because it's top heavy. They're controlling it, and once you fall out of favor, it'd have been unimaginable to say 20 years ago that USC is making these low key power moves. Not even low key, but like they're not as strong as they once were. So, like, if that's USC. Like, so the idea that this isn't going to keep happening, like, I can only imagine what it's going to look like in 2036 when this contract is supposed to be up. Like, how different the landscape of college athletics will be by 2036 in 13 years.
I mean, honestly, at that point, like I said, we should just go pro-am at that point. Like at that point, like it just doesn't.
I mean, it pretty much is now, man. That's what you got. Like, LSU and Alabama are glorified pro teams.
The same with Ohio State. You might as well do that.
Yeah,
you might as well do that, because that's the only way that this even makes sense.
Like, technically, SMU and Ohio State are on the same level.
Like, it's stupid.
And to people that don't know college sports, sure. But tell them where they can find you, bro. I gotta run.
Yeah, I gotta run too. You can find me at Never For Brett Me. That's NEVA_4 BRETT_ME on Instagram and Twitter.
Finally, the dope blog is back. No, I'm sorry. I'm just tired. I'm at the Chuck D on all the socials. We're at _dope blog on Instagram, the dope blog, all one word, on Twitter. Is that backwards? I don't know. No, I am not looking at anything.
No, that's it. That's right.
It is right? Yeah. I was like, wait. Yeah.
What's your actual socials?
Not the Chuck D. All one word on all the socials.
There you go. We are the Dope.
www.thedope.blog.
There you go. And because you're watching this on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe.
You already know.
Next time, as we continue to discuss other people's excellence.
Peace.